Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books here in the sannyasi quarters at 3402 Radha Lane, no joke, 77018, just in case you want to send letters and cards and donations. Oh, anyway. Next is Shri Shri Radha Nilamadhava Temple on this auspicious day of Lord Varaha's appearance day. Lord Varahadev ki jai. Tomorrow Lord Nityananda's appearance day. Hare Krishna. Okay. We're going right into, we're a little late, so we're going to go right into Sanatana Goswami's glorification of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. And it goes like this. Sarva Shastabdi Piyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnaja Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths. You are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad-Bhagavata Prabho Kalidwandoditaditya Shri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad-Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramamanda Pataya Prema Varshaksharayate Sarvada Savasevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Marika Bando Matsangin Madgudo Man Mahadana Man Nistadaga Madbhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu saduta dayin atini chochata kada hanamuncha gadachin mam premna rit kantayos buddha. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, we've reached 4th canto, chapter 22. We're starting from text 27. And Prthu Maharaj is hearing instructions from the 4 Kumaras. It doesn't get any better than this. The 4 Kumaras, the original yogis, original mystics, original personalities that appeared from Lord Brahma at the beginning of the universe. In other words, they're, except for Brahma, they're the oldest persons in existence in this universe. And they're extremely wise. They're continuing to instruct Prthu Maharaj. Text 28. I said 27, but it's 28. Or maybe I should do 27. Did you write down 27 on the thing? 27? You did. Okay, we're going to read 27, even though we read it yesterday, because it's so good.
Chapter 22?
Chapter 22, text 27. 4 Kumaras are speaking. When a person becomes devoid, oh, Uncle John, you came just in time to get greeted before we start. Hare Krishna. When a person becomes devoid of all material desires and liberated from all material qualities, he transcends distinctions between actions executed externally and internally. At that time, the difference between the soul and the supersoul, which was existing before self-realization, is annihilated. When a dream is over, there is no longer a distinction between the dream and the dreamer. Purport. Haribol Singita. As described by Srila Rupa Goswami, Anyabhilashita Shunyam. One must be devoid of all material desires. When a person becomes devoid of all material desires, there is no longer need for speculative knowledge or fruitive activities. In that connection, it is to be understood that one is free from the material body. The example is already given above. A coconut, which is dry, is loosened from its outward husk. This is the stage of liberation. As said in Srimad-Bhagavatam 2.10.6, Mukti 2.10.6, Mukti, liberation, means Sarupena Vyabhastitihi, being situated in one's own constitutional position. All material desires are present as long as one is in the bodily concept of life. But when one realizes that he is an eternal servant of Krishna, his desires are no longer material. A devotee acts in this consciousness. In other words, when material desires in connection with the body are finished, one is actually liberated. When one is liberated from the material qualities, he does not do anything for his personal sense gratification. At that time, all activities performed by him are absolute. In the conditioned state, there are two kinds of activities. One acts on behalf of the body, and at the same time, he acts to become liberated. The devotee, when he is completely free from all material desires or all material qualities, transcends the duality of action for the body and the soul. Then the bodily concept of life is completely over. Therefore, Srila Rupa Goswami says, Iha yasya harir dasye karmana manasa gira nikila swapyabastasu jivan mukta sa uchite. When one is completely fixed in the service of the Lord, he is a liberated person in any condition of life. He is called Jivan Mukta, liberated even within this body. In such a liberated condition, there is no distinction between actions for sense gratification and actions for liberation. When one is liberated from the desires of sense gratification, he has no longer to suffer the reactions of lamentation or illusion. Activities performed by the karmis and jnanis are subject to lamentation and illusion. But a self-realized, liberated person, acting only for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, experiences none. This is the stage of oneness, or merging into the existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This means that the individual soul, while keeping his individual identity, his individuality, no longer has separate interests. He is fully in the service of the Lord, and he has nothing to do for his personal sense gratification. And therefore he sees only the Supreme Personality of Godhead and not himself. His personal interest completely perishes. When a person comes out of a dream, the dream vanishes. While dreaming, a person may consider himself a king and see the royal paraphernalia, his soldiers, etc. But when the dream is over, he does not see anything beyond himself. Similarly, a liberated person understands that he is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, acting in accordance with the desire of the Supreme Lord. And as such, there is no distinction between himself and the Supreme Lord, although both of them retain their individuality. Nityo Nityanam Chetananam Kata Upanishad 2.2.13. This is the perfect conception of oneness in relation to the super soul and the soul. 28. When the soul exists for sense gratification, he creates different desires, and for that reason he becomes subjected to designations. But when one is in the transcendental position, he is no longer interested in anything except fulfilling the desires of the Lord. Purport. Being covered by material desires, a spirit soul is also considered to be covered by designations belonging to a particular type of body. Thus he considers himself an animal, man, demigod, bird, beast, etc. In so many ways he is influenced by self-identification caused by false egoism. And being covered by illusory material desires, he distinguishes between matter and spirit. When one is devoid of such distinctions between matter and when one is devoid of such distinctions, there is no longer a difference between matter and spirit. At that time, the spirit is the only predominating factor. As long as one is covered by material desires, he thinks himself the master or the enjoyer. Thus he acts for sense gratification and becomes subjected to material pangs, happiness, and distress. But when one is freed from such a concept of life, he is no longer subjected to designations, and he envisions everything as spiritual in connection with the Supreme Lord. This is explained by Srila Rupa Goswami in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.2, 255. Anasaktasya Vishayan Yatarham Upayunjataha Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe Yuktam Vairagyamuchyate. The liberated person has no attachment for anything material or for sense gratification. He understands that everything is connected with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and that everything should be engaged in the service of the Lord. Therefore, he does not give up anything. There is no question of renouncing anything, because the Paramahansa knows how to engage everything in the service of the Lord. Originally, everything is spiritual. Nothing is material. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 8.274, also, it is explained that a Mahabhagavata, a highly advanced devotee, has no material vision. Stavada jangama deke, nadeki taramurti, sarvatrahaya nija ishtadeva spurti. Although he sees trees, mountains, and other living entities moving here and there, he sees all as the creation of the Supreme Lord, and, with reference to the context, sees only the Creator and not the created. In other words, he no longer distinguishes between the created and the Creator. He sees only the Supreme Personality of Godhead in everything. He sees Krishna in everything, and everything in Krishna. This is oneness. Text 29. Only because of different causes does a person see a difference between himself and others. Just as one sees the reflection of a body appearing differently, manifested on water, on oil, or in a mirror. Purport. I'll read that again. This is such a nice verse. Only because of different causes does a person see a difference between himself and others, just as one sees the reflection of a body appearing differently manifested on body or oil, or in a mirror. Purport. The spirit soul is one, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is manifested in swangsha and vibhinangsha expansions. The jivas are vibhinangsha expansions. The different incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are swangsha expansions. Thus there are different potencies of the Supreme Lord, and there are different expansions of the different potencies. In this way, for different reasons, there are different expansions of the same one principle, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This understanding is real knowledge, but when the living entity is covered by the upadhi, or designated body, he sees differences, exactly as one sees differences in reflections of oneself on water, on oil, or in a mirror. When something is reflected on the water, it appears to be moving. When it is reflected on ice, it appears fixed. Dr. Hare Krishna. We have. Put him there next to Uncle John. Uncle John will keep him awake. Oh, what happened? Oh, you moved. Doctor, you take your chair. No.
You're the chairman of the board.
You're always saying how you accept me as this and that, so I'm telling you now to go sit in that chair, so you have to do it. Test of faith. Okay, very good. Dr. Hari Balam has just entered the room. We had to make sure he had a proper chair. Hare Krishna. Okay, this is very deep. I'm going to go through this again. The different expansions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are swangsha expansions. Thus, there are different potencies of the Lord, and there are different expansions of the different potencies. In this way, for different reasons, there are different expansions of the same one principle, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This understanding is real knowledge, but when the living entity is covered by the upadhi, or designated body, he sees differences exactly as one sees differences in reflections of oneself on water, on oil, or in a mirror. When something is reflected on the water, it appears to be moving. When it is reflected on ice, it appears fixed. And when it is reflected on oil, it appears hazy. The subject is one, but under different conditions it appears differently. When the qualifying factor is taken away, the whole appears to be one. In other words, when one comes to the paramahamsa, or perfectional stage of life, by practicing bhakti yoga, he sees only Krishna everywhere. For him there is no other objective. In conclusion, due to different causes, the living entity is visible in different forms, as an animal, human being, demigod, tree, etc. Actually, every living entity is the marginal potency of the Supreme Lord. In Bhagavad Gita 5.18, therefore, it is explained that one who actually sees the spirit soul does not distinguish between a learned brahmana and a cow, an elephant, a dog, an elephant, or a cow. Pandita samadarshina. One who is actually learned sees only the living entity, not the outward covering. Differentiation is therefore the result of different karma or fruitive activities, and when we stop fruitive activities, turning them into acts of devotion, we can understand that we are not different from anyone else regardless of the form. This is only possible in Krishna consciousness. In this movement, there are many different races of men from all parts of the world participating. But because they think of themselves as servants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they do not differentiate between black and white, yellow and red. The Krishna consciousness movement is therefore the only means to make the living entities free from all designations. Text 30. When one's mind and senses are attracted to sense objects for enjoyment, the mind becomes agitated. As a result of continually thinking of sense gratification, one's real consciousness almost becomes lost, like the water in a lake that is gradually sucked up by the big grass straws on its bank. Purport. In this verse, it is very nicely explained how our original Krishna consciousness becomes polluted, and we gradually become completely forgetful of our relationship with the Supreme Lord. In the previous verse, it is recommended that we should always keep in touch with the devotional service of the Lord, so that the blazing fire of devotional service can gradually burn into ashes material desires, and we can become liberated from the repetition of birth and death. This is how we can indirectly keep our staunch faith in the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When the mind is allowed to think of sense gratification, when the mind is allowed to think of the, wait a second, I got something from Hari Ballab. You're over here airdropping me things? It was a mistake? This was Krishna. Krishna just sent me a message that you weren't paying attention. Eh? Krishna, it's right here in the purport, right? We just saw Krishna revealed to us that he wasn't paying attention. Okay, doctor, pay attention. Okay. This is too much nice. I'm going to repeat just the last part. In the previous verse, it is recommended that we should always keep in touch with the devotional service of the Lord, so that the blazing fire of devotional service can gradually burn into ashes material desires, and we can become liberated from our repetition of birth and death. This is also how we can indirectly keep our staunch faith in the lotus feet of the Personality of Godhead. When the mind is allowed to think of sense gratification continuously, it becomes the cause of our material bondage. If our mind is simply filled with sense gratification, even though we want Krishna consciousness, by continuous practice, we cannot forget the subject matter of sense gratification. If one takes up the sannyas order of life, but is not able to control the mind, he will think of objects of sense gratification, namely family, society, expensive house, etc. Even though he goes to the Himalayas or the forest, his mind will continue thinking of the objects of sense gratification. In this way, gradually one's intelligence will be affected. When intelligence is affected, one loses his original taste for Krishna consciousness. The example given here is appropriate. If a big lake is covered all around by long kusha grass, just like columns, the waters dry up. Similarly, when the big columns of material desire increase, the clear water of consciousness is dried up. Therefore, these columns of kusha grass should be cut or thrown away from the very beginning. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has instructed that if from the very beginning we do not take care of unwanted grass in the paddy fields, the fertilizing agents of water will be used by them, and the paddy plants will dry up. The material desires for sense enjoyment is the cause of our fall down in this material world, and thus we suffer the threefold miseries in continuous birth, death, old age, and disease. However, if we turn our desires toward the transcendental loving service of the Lord, our desires become purified. We cannot kill desires. We have to purify them of different designations. If we constantly think of being a member of a particular nation, society, or family, and continuously think about them, we become very strongly entangled in the conditioned life of birth and death. But if our desires are applied to the service of the Lord, they become purified, and thus we become immediately freed from material contamination. Text 31. When one deviates from his original consciousness, he loses the capacity to remember his previous position or recognize his present one. When remembrance is lost, all knowledge acquired is based on a false foundation. When this occurs, learned scholars consider that the soul is lost. Purport. The living entity or the soul is ever existing and eternal. It cannot be lost. But learned scholars say that it is lost when actual knowledge is not working. That is the difference between animals and human beings. According to less intelligent philosophers, animals have no soul. But factually, animals have souls. Due to the animals' gross ignorance, however, it appears that they have lost their souls. Without the soul, the body cannot move. That is the difference between a living body and a dead body. When the soul is out of the body is called dead. The soul is said to be lost when there is no proper knowledge exhibited. Our original consciousness is Krishna consciousness, because we are part and parcel of Krishna. When this consciousness is misguided, and one is put into the material atmosphere, which pollutes the original consciousness, one thinks that he is a product of the material elements. Thus one loses his real remembrance of his position as part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Just as a man who sleeps forgets himself. In this way, when the activities of proper consciousness are checked, all the activities of the lost soul are performed on a false basis. At the present moment, human civilization is acting on a false platform of bodily identification. Therefore, it can be said that the people of the present age have lost their souls. And in this respect, they are no better than animals. Text 32. There is no stronger obstruction to one's self-interest than thinking other subject matters to be more pleasing than one's self-realization. Shall I repeat that?
Yes.
This is an aphorism. This belongs printed out, and everywhere you look, it should be there. There is no stronger obstruction to one's self-interest than thinking other subject matters to be more pleasing than one's self-realization. Purport. Human life is especially meant for self-realization. Self refers to the super-self and the individual self, the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entity. When, however, one becomes more interested in the body and bodily sense gratification, he creates for himself obstructions on the path of self-realization, which is prohibited. By the influence of Maya, one becomes more interested in sense gratification, which is prohibited in this world for those interested in self-realization. Instead of becoming interested in self-gratification, one should divert his activities to satisfy the senses of the Supreme Soul. Anything performed contrary to this principle is certainly against one's self-interest. Text 33. For human society, constantly thinking of how to earn money and apply it for sense gratification brings about the destruction of everyone's interests. When one becomes devoid of knowledge and devotional service, he enters into species of life like those of trees and stones. Purport: Jnana, or knowledge, means to understand one's constitutional position, and vijnana refers to practical application of that knowledge in life. In the human form of life, one should come to the position of jnana and vijnana. But despite this great opportunity, if one does not develop knowledge and practical application of knowledge through the help of a spiritual master and the Shastras, in other words, if one misuses this opportunity, then in the next life he is sure to be born in a species of non-moving living entities. Non-moving living entities include hills, mountains, trees, plants, etc. This stage of life is called punyatam, or mukyatam, namely, making all activities zero. Philosophers who support stopping all activities are called shunyavadi. I'll read that again. Philosophers who support stopping all activities are called shunyavadis. By nature's own way, our activities are to be gradually diverted to devotional service. Nirvishesha shunyavadi paschatya deshatarane. This is Prabhupada's pranam mantra, and that word shunyavadi is here in this purport. Philosophers who support stopping all activities are called shunyavadi. Prabhupada came to the West to defeat this shunyavadi and nirvishesha, impersonalism and voidism. By nature's own way, our activities are to be gradually diverted to devotional service. But there are philosophers who, instead of purifying their activities, try to make everything zero or void of all activities. This lack of activity is represented by the trees and the hills. This is a kind of punishment inflicted by the laws of nature. If we do not properly execute our mission of life in self-realization, nature's punishment will render us inactive by putting us in the form of trees and hills. Therefore, activities directed towards sense gratification are condemned herein. One who is constantly thinking of activities to earn money and gratify the senses is following a path which is suicidal. Factually, all human society is following this path. Some way or other, people are determined to earn money or get money by begging, borrowing, or stealing, and applying that for sense gratification. Such a civilization is the greatest obstacle in the path of self-realization. Text 34. Those who strongly desire to cross the ocean of nations must not associate with the modes of ignorance. For hedonistic activities are the greatest obstructions to realization of religious principles, economic development, regulated sense gratification, and at last, liberation. Purport. The four principles of life allow one to live according to religious principles, to earn money according to one's position in society, to allow the senses to enjoy the sense objects according to regulations, and to progress along the path of liberation from this material attachment. As long as the body is there, it is not possible to become completely free from all these material interests. It is not, however, recommended that one act only for sense gratification and earn money for that purpose only, sacrificing all religious principles. At the present moment, human civilization does not care for religious principles. It is, however, greatly interested in economic development without religious principles. For instance, in a slaughterhouse, the butchers certainly get money easily, but such business is not based on religious principles. Similarly, there are many nightclubs for sense gratification and brothels for sex. Sex, of course, is allowed in married life, but prostitution is prohibited because all our activities are ultimately aimed at liberation, at freedom from the clutches of material existence. Similarly, although the government may license liquor shops, this does not mean that liquor shops should be open unrestrictedly and illicit liquor smuggled. Licensing is meant for restricting. No one has to take a license for sugar, wheat, or milk, because there is no need to restrict these things. In other words, it is advised that one not act in a way that will obstruct the regular process of advancement in spiritual life and liberation. The Vedic process of sense gratification is therefore planned in such a way that one can economically develop and enjoy sense gratification and yet ultimately attain liberation. Vedic civilization offers us knowledge in the Shastras, and if we live a regulated life under the direction of Shastras and Guru, all our material desires will be fulfilled. I'll read that again, just in case you weren't paying attention. Vedic civilization offers us all knowledge in the Shastras, and if we live a regulated life under the direction of Shastras and Guru, all our material desires will be fulfilled. And at the same time, we will be able to go forward to liberation. Text 35. Out of the four principles, namely religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation, liberation has to be taken very seriously. The other three are subject to destruction by the stringent law of nature, death. The other three are subject to destruction by the stringent law of nature or death. You got it. Congratulations. Purport. Moksha, or liberation, has to be taken very seriously, even at the sacrifice of the other three items. As advised by Sutta Goswami in the beginning of Srimad-Bhagavatam, religious principles are not based on success in economic development. Because we are very attached to sense gratification, we go to God, to the temple or churches, for some economic reasons. Then again, economic development does not mean sense gratification. Everything should be adjusted in such a way that we attain liberation. Therefore, in this verse, liberation, moksha, is stressed. The other three items are material and therefore subject to destruction. Even if somehow we accumulate a great big bank balance in this life and possess many material things, everything will be finished with death. In Bhagavad Gita it is said that death is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who ultimately takes away everything acquired by the materialistic person. Foolishly, we do not care for this. Foolishly, we are not afraid of death, nor do we consider that death will take away everything acquired by the process of dharma, artha, and kama. By dharma, or pious activities, we may be elevated to the heavenly planets, but this does not mean freedom from the clutches of birth, death, old age, and disease. The purport is that we can sacrifice our interests in trivargya, religious principles, economic development, and sense gratification, but we cannot sacrifice the cause of liberation. Regarding liberation, it is stated in Bhagavad Gita 4:9, Tyaktva deham punar janma naiti. Liberation means that after giving up this body, one does not have to accept another material body. To the impersonalists, liberation means merging into the existence of the impersonal Brahman. But factually, this is not moksha, because one has to again fall down into this material world from that impersonal position. One should therefore seek the shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and engage in His devotional service. That is real liberation. The conclusion is that we should not stress pious activities, economic development, and sense gratification, but should concern ourselves with approaching Lord Vishnu in His spiritual planets, of which the topmost is Goloka Vrindavan, where Krishna lives. Where who lives? Krishna. There you go. I knew someone would hear that one. Therefore, this Krishna consciousness movement is the greatest gift for persons who are actually desiring liberation. We've got a doctor in the house who's on call 24/7. If you could only be so connected with Krishna as you are with your patients, I mean, that would be it, you know. All right? Okay. Text 36. We accept as blessings different states of higher life, distinguishing them from lower states of life. Hari Bol, Hari Krishna. We accept as blessings different states of higher life, distinguishing them from lower states of life. But we should know that such distinctions exist only in relation to the interchange of the modes of material nature. Actually, these states of life have no permanent existence, for all of them will be destroyed by the Supreme Controller. Purport: in our material existence, we accept a higher form of life as a blessing and a lower form as a curse. This distinction of higher and lower only exists as long as the different material qualities, gunas, interact. In other words, by our good activities, we are elevated to the higher planetary systems or to a higher standard of life, good education, beautiful body, etc. These are the results of pious activities. Similarly, by impious activities, we remain illiterate, get ugly bodies, a poor standard of living, etc. But all these different states of life are under the laws of material nature. Through the interaction of the qualities of goodness, passion, and ignorance. However, all these qualities will cease to act at the time of the dissolution of the entire cosmic manifestation. The Lord therefore says in Bhagavad Gita 18:16, Abrahma bhavana loka punar avartunorjuna mamupechata konteya punar janma navidyate. Even though we elevate ourselves to the highest planetary system by the scientific advancement of knowledge, or by the religious principles of life, great sacrifices, and fruitive activities, at the time of dissolution, these higher planetary systems and life on them will be destroyed. In this verse, the word Isha Vidbang Chitashisham indicate that all such blessings will be destroyed by the Supreme Controller. We will not be protected. Our bodies, either in this planet or in another planet, will be destroyed, and again, we will have to remain for millions of years in an unconscious state within the body of Mahavishnu. And again, when the creation is manifested, we have to take birth in different species of life and begin our activities. Therefore, we should not be satisfied simply by getting promotion to a higher planetary system. We should try to get out of the material cosmic manifestation, go to the spiritual world, and take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is our highest achievement. We should not be attracted by anything material, higher or lower, but should consider them all on the same level. Our real engagement should be in inquiring about the real purpose of life and rendering devotional service to the Lord. Thus we will be eternally blessed in our spiritual activities, full of knowledge and bliss. Regulated human civilization promotes dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. In human society there must be religion. Without religion, human society is only animal society. Economic development and sense gratification must be based on religious principles. When religion, economic development, and sense gratification are adjusted, liberation from this material birth, death, old age, and disease is assured. In the present age of Kali, however, there is no question of religion and liberation. People have taken interest only in economic development and sense gratification. Therefore, despite sufficient economic development all over the world, dealings in human society have become almost animalistic. When everything becomes grossly animalistic, dissolution takes place. This dissolution is to be accepted as Isha Vidbang Shita Shisham. The Lord's so-called blessings of economic development and sense gratification will be conclusively dissolved by destruction. At the end of this Kali Yuga, the Lord will appear as the incarnation of Kalki, and his only business will be to kill all human beings on the surface of the globe. After that killing, another golden age will begin. We should therefore know that our material activities are just like childish play. Children may play on the beach, and the father may sit and watch this childish play, the construction of buildings with sand, and the construction of walls and so many things. But finally, the father will ask the children to come home. Then everything is destroyed. Persons who are too addicted to the childish activities of economic development and sense gratification are sometimes especially favored by the Lord when He destroys their construction of these things. It is said by the Lord, Yasya ham anugrinami hayishe tadanam shanai. The Lord told Yudhishthira Maharaj that His special favor is shown to His devotee when He takes away all the devotee's material opulences. Generally, therefore, it is experienced that Vaishnavas are not very opulent in the material sense. When a Vaishnava, pure devotee, tries to be materially opulent and at the same time desires to serve the Supreme Lord, his devotional service is checked. The Lord, in order to show him a special favor, destroys his so-called economic development and material opulences. Thus the devotee, being frustrated in his repeated attempts at economic development, ultimately takes solid shelter under the lotus feet of the Lord. This kind of action may also be accepted as Isha Vidbang Shisha Shisham, whereby the Lord destroys one's material opulences but enriches one in spiritual understanding. In the course of our preaching work, we sometimes see that the materialistic persons come to us and offer their obeisances to take blessings, which means they want more and more material opulences. If such material opulences are checked Such persons are no longer interested in offering obeisances to the devotees. Such materialistic persons are always concerned about their economic development. They offer obeisances to saintly persons or to the Supreme Lord and give something in charity for preaching work with a view that they will be rewarded with further economic development. However, when one is sincere in his devotional service, the Lord obliges the devotee to give up his material development and completely surrender it to Him. Because the Lord does not give blessings of material opulence to His devotee, people are afraid of worshipping Lord Vishnu. Because they see that the Vaishnavas who are worshippers of Lord Vishnu are poor in superficial material opulences. Such materialistic persons, however, get immense opportunity for economic development by worshipping Lord Shiva. For Lord Shiva is the husband of the goddess Durga, the proprietor of this universe. Wow. By the grace of Lord Shiva, a devotee gets the opportunity to be blessed by the goddess Durga. Ravana, for example, was a great worshipper and devotee of Lord Shiva, and in return he got all the blessings of goddess Durga, so much so that his whole kingdom was constructed of golden buildings. In Brazil, in this present age, huge quantities of gold have been found, and from historical references in the Puranas, we can guess safely that this was Ravana's kingdom. This kingdom was, however, destroyed by Lord Ramachandra. By studying such incidents, we can understand the full meaning of Isha Vidbang Shita Shisham. The Lord does not bestow material blessings upon the devotees, for they may be entrapped again in this material world by continuous birth, death, old age, and disease. Due to materialistic opulences, persons like Ravana become puffed up for sense gratification. Ravana even dared kidnap Sita, who was both the wife of Lord Ramachandra and the goddess of fortune, thinking that he would be able to enjoy the pleasure potency of the Lord. But actually, by such action, Ravana became Vidbangshita, or ruined. At the present moment, human civilization is too much attached to economic development and sense gratification, and is therefore nearing the path of ruination. That was, let me see, sometime around 1974 that was written. And here we are, closer to ruination than we were then. Okay, I'm going to close down the reading tonight now. It's 5:34. Any points of interest? Points that came up that stuck in anybody's mind? Nothing.
Very low battery.
Oh.
We might lose the video like any moment.
He's saying the phone battery is low.
The battery is low.
Switch off.
At any second. Maybe this is why Krishna's trying to get me out of here early. This is what he does, I guess. He takes everything away. Just when you think you're going to get the whole thing. What's the percentage?
It was 10. Yeah, it was 10%.
Now what is it? So must be 3 or 4.
Yeah, I saw the 20%.
Okay. All of you out in cyberspace, we're just about to lose our battery energy, which just proves the point that we've been reading about all day today, or all sessions, that as good as it gets in the material world, it goes away. And the only way to solve that problem is to actually go back to the spiritual world and get a fully spiritualized body. So even if we are here and our bodies are spiritualized, and I wanted to make one point, reflection that I was making as I was listening to that last part. It seemed like devotees only get things taken away. But it's not like that, because Prabhupada, he got everything taken away. And then when he started the movement, he started, doing just exactly what his spiritual master wanted. Exclusively, Krishna started giving back. giving back, and he got back more than he could use, possibly that he could use. So we shouldn't think that if I give everything to Krishna, then there's nothing going to be left over for me. If you get tested, Krishna will give you everything. He'll give you the world. Like Dhruva, he got a planet, 36,000 years of total control, full sense gratification, no danger that he would ever forget. Yes.
We read that Krishna doesn't give material opulences. I was wondering about that pastime of Krishna blessing the fruit vendor. Is that a spiritual treasure that he filled her basket with?
Yes. But it was also material. It was also in the material world. So therefore, it is a fact that Krishna gives back to his devotees. But he only gives things to his devotees that at a time when they won't become distracted from him. And then if you read the rest of that story, this fruit vendor became completely enamored by Krishna. She didn't forget Krishna and go and build herself a palace. She became enamored with Krishna. So that's how we can tell whether or not something's being sent by Maya or whether it's being sent by Krishna. If you get an opulence that is causing you to become more absorbed in Krishna and more in love with Krishna, then it's being sent to you by Krishna. If he gives an opulence that causes you to forget him, that's being sent by Maya. Yes. Bhakti Cassidy. Still going? Okay.
You were talking about the end of the material construct.
Yes.
Um,
End of the material construct.
I was wondering if it's described like what it'll be like for the material bodies and the consciousness here. Like it just talks about like how it'll be gone, but I'm wondering what like the process is.
He's asking about the process of the end of the material construct. Well, there's different ends of material constructs. One of them is obvious, that's the end of this material construct. Then the material body is finished and the soul moves on, carried by the subtle body, to another body. That means the material construct is not completely finished, it's just not visible. But when the whole construct is finished, the whole cosmic manifestation, then the process of creation is reversed. We read in the third canto how the process of creation goes from subtle to gross, subtle to gross, from ether to air to fire to water to earth, and the subtle elements before that. So that process is reversed. And first the earth becomes inundated with water. Then there's the sun turns so hot, everything just burns up. And gradually it goes back into the pradhan, the total material energy where it came from. And then the whole thing is wound up back into the body of Mahavishnu, along with the subtle bodies and the resultant or unfulfilled desires of the souls and the souls. They all get wound back up into the body of Mahavishnu. And then at the time of the next creation, it all comes back again by the same process. And it corresponds to the Lord's out-breath and in-breath. Yes, Patrick.
So, as it comes back out each time, I've noticed that like all the Srimad-Bhagavatam, everything's written like a play. So are the characters the same? So the material bodies are the same and different souls fill them, or how does that work?
It's true that each material creation unwinds in a similar way. Like all the universes have a Lord Brahma, they have 7 sages. The planets, Earth is the same in each one where Krishna comes. and there's reference points where, like an engineer has a reference point. When you see the house was built, that first they came and they used their transoms and put a post here and a post there and a post there, so they had the reference points to know where to put everything so the thing can get constructed. It's just like that, only on a gigantic, and all the souls come out, the same souls in the last come out, and they come into the same condition that they were before. Not the same body, a different body, but the same condition.
Mm-hmm. But do the bodies, like, so if another incarnation were to come and I left this body, then would another body, like a soul, fill this role at this time in that creation?
No.
Okay. I didn't know if this like the same bodies of individuals.
That's what the Christians think. We'll get resurrected from our old body, the body we have now, and we'll end up in the spiritual world with our same body, with the same kids and same life and same everything. No, that's not possible. Yes, Hannah. Make it quick. We're about ready to lose her.
But don't the bodies of demigods stay the same?
No. She's asking, don't the demigod's bodies stay the same?